They laughed at my phone as if it were some kind of dying animal. I stood there, holding that little silver flip, so small it fit into my palm like a folded secret, and listened to my own family joke about how prehistoric it looked. Funny how people forget that small things sometimes hold the sharpest truths. I didn't say a word. At my age, silence is mistaken for weakness far more often than it should be. Grandma, how do you even survive with that thing? Lauren snorted, tapping her glossy nails against her own screen like she was playing an instrument I'd never learn. She's 30 and believes youth is a shield against cruelty. I hope life teaches her gently. It rarely does. My son's wife, Kendra, added a quiet laugh she thought I wouldn't hear. She always laughs like the world belongs to her, and I'm just a visiting guest overstaying my welcome. Daniel, my son, didn't defend me. He rarely does anymore. He just sighed, shaking his head with theatrical pity, as if having me in the room made the air heavier. "It's time we get her something normal," Kendra said. "I mean, come on, it's almost embarrassing." Embarrassing? Yes. I suppose that's what I am to them now. I gave the phone a small pat with my thumb, the way one touches an old dog who never betrayed them. My late husband, Peter, had shown me once, many years ago, how to turn on its automatic call recording. He said, "Maggie, you forget things. Let the phone remember for you." I never turned that feature off. I never needed to. Until now. They didn't know the phone was recording them even as they laughed. They didn't know it had recorded something far more important the night before, when they thought I was already asleep. I hadn't meant to listen back. Not at first. But the blinking icon had been there when I woke up. A new file, time-stamped around midnight. And something in my bones had whispered, "Play it." But not yet. Not while they stood over me offering tiny smirks like sugar-coated poison. "Oh, leave her," Daniel finally muttered, almost tired. "She won't change. She never does." I smiled then, small, almost apologetic. They always mistook that smile for surrender. They didn't understand it was the last thing before a door closes. When they finally left the kitchen, their laughter echoing down the hall like a fading insult, I stayed where I was. The house felt still again, almost grateful for the silence. My joints ached, but that wasn't new. I'd long learned to walk through pain quietly. Age teaches you that some hurts don't need an audience. I flipped open the phone. The hinge clicked. Soft, familiar, like a breath from another life. The midnight file waited there. I pressed play. At first, it was only murmurs, shifting chairs, the clinking of glasses. Then Daniel's voice, low and irritated. "We need to move this along," he said. "Mom isn't getting any younger, and we can't wait forever." Kendra's voice followed, smooth, confident. "She won't resist if we present it as help. She's too gentle for conflict. Once we get the papers signed, the house goes on the market, and the accounts get transferred under the medical supervision clause. Simple." Lauren laughed. "Honestly, she'll thank us. Old people don't need that much space anyway." The recording continued, each word a small hammer against something inside me. Not breaking it, no, but reshaping it. I sat there, listening to the people who shared my blood speak about me like I was an object they were rearranging in their future plans. They didn't know I had heard. They didn't know I wasn't nearly as helpless as they liked to imagine. I closed the phone slowly. No trembling, no tears, just a long, steady breath. Age may make you quiet, but quiet does not mean blind. Morning came quietly, as it always does, with the pale light pushing its way through the curtains like an old friend too polite to knock. I sat at the edge of my bed for a while before standing up. At my age, you don't jump into the day, you negotiate with it. A slow rise, a hand on the nightstand, a sigh held in until the bones decide they're ready. Nothing heroic, just the simple choreography of an old body. My house felt cooler than usual. Maybe it was just me. This place has been mine for so long that I can hear its moods in the creaks of the floorboards. Peter and I rebuilt half of it ourselves, long before the children were born, sanding the banisters, painting the window frames. Even after he passed, the house never felt empty, just quieter, as if waiting for me to speak first. I didn't turn on the television. Noise felt wrong today. Instead, I brewed tea, the kind Peter liked. Strong, almost bitter. I poured it into my old porcelain cup, the one with the blue rim. It has a tiny crack that looks like a wrinkle. Age finds everything, even dishes. I carried it to the small table near the window and sat down. Outside, the wind was bending the branches of the maple tree. That tree is older than Daniel. It's weathered storms, winters, insects, and, more recently, my family's laughter drifting from the porch whenever they came by and found something else to ridicule. Gently, politely, with that sharpness that hides in soft voices. Funny how people can wound you without ever raising their tone. My phone lay on the table beside the cup. The little silver flip. Harmless, old-fashioned, irrelevant in their eyes. A tiny relic of my life before theirs overshadowed mine. But I could still feel the weight of last night's recording pressing on me, as real as a hand on my shoulder. They wanted control. They wanted my house, my accounts, my future. Not out of love or concern, no. That would have been easier to bear. Their voices on that recording weren't worried. They were calculating. The kind of tone people use when discussing furniture that no longer fits the room. I let the tea warm my palms. My heart was steady, not racing. I suppose when betrayal comes from those you raised, the hurt doesn't arrive as shock. It arrives like recognition. A quiet, tired ah. So this is how far we've drifted. I spent the morning dusting shelves, rearranging small things, giving myself tasks so I wouldn't sit and think too much. Dust doesn't judge you. Dishes don't laugh behind closed doors. Floors don't ask for signatures. By noon, I went out to my garden, bent down, slowly, to pull a weed that had grown between the paving stones. My joints complained, but I welcomed it. Physical pain is honest. It doesn't pretend to be concern. A neighbor walked by, a woman about my age named Helen. She waved. I waved back. She asked about the weather. I answered politely. I didn't mention the recording. People my age don't spill their troubles to anyone who asks how we're doing. Life taught us early that not everyone truly listens. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets I keep in drawers. I sat back in my favorite armchair, the cushion shaped by years of my weight. My hands rested quietly on my lap. Everything around me felt familiar, safe, mine. But beneath that calm, a small thread of steel began forming, thin but steady, stretching through the center of me. I had choices to make, not dramatic ones, not the kind that involve shouting or throwing anyone out. No, something else. Something quieter, cleaner. I've lived long enough to know that decisions made in anger often ruin more than they solve. So I sat there and let the house breathe with me until the sharpness softened into clarity. If they were planning to take my life apart piece by piece, then I needed to decide how much of myself I was still willing to give them. And for the first time in many, many years, the answer wasn't obvious. When I finally rose from the chair, it wasn't with confusion or fear. It was with something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of direction. Thin at first, yes, but real. The beginning of a step back into myself. The phone lay on the table where I'd left it. Not a relic, not a joke, a witness. And I wasn't done with it yet. I didn't plan to listen to the recording again that evening, but it wouldn't leave me alone. It followed me through the house like a draft under a closed door. Every time I sat down, my mind returned to the same words. Move this along. Access to the accounts. She won't resist. People think that with age comes forgetfulness, and maybe that's true in small things, where I placed my reading glasses, whether I watered the fern yesterday or the day before. But betrayal? No. The mind remembers betrayal with painful clarity, no matter how old you are. I took the phone with me to the living room and sat on the sofa. The cushions sagged a little from years of use, fitting my shape like a soft memory. I folded my hands around the phone. So light, so unthreatening. And yet what it held was heavier than anything I'd carried in a long time. I opened the screen and pressed play. The voices came back instantly, too familiar, too sharp. Daniel's voice first, clipped and annoyed. She doesn't need that much money sitting around. It's irresponsible at her age. We should take over her finances before she starts forgetting things. I closed my eyes. They'd never asked how I managed the bills. They never noticed that my accounts balanced to the penny, that not once in decades had I missed a payment. They decided my age was proof enough of incompetence. Kendra's voice followed, firmer this time. If we don't get ahead of this, someone else will. You know how many scams target elderly people? We're just protecting her and protecting ourselves. That house needs to go before it falls apart. The house Peter and I painted by hand, each room layered with our stubbornness and affection. The house that held the echo of our lives. They spoke about it as if it were a stain they needed to scrub off their future. Then Lauren, again, sounding far too casual. Mom said legal guardianship paperwork is fast if she signs willingly, and she will. She's always been agreeable. Agreeable. A polite way to say, easy to silence. The recording rustled with the sound of clinking glasses. A toast. My own family raising drinks to a future where I had no say. I stopped the playback. For a long moment, the house felt cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from winter or drafts, but the cold of realization. The kind that settles in your chest and makes everything inside you still. I wasn't afraid. That surprised me. Anger crept in, yes, but quietly, like a cat stepping onto a familiar porch. Mostly, though, I felt something older than anger. Weariness. The kind that comes from years of soft insults, from being spoken over, from being smiled at while decisions are made around you. I set the phone down and stood up. My back ached, but it always ached. Pain had long ago become a companion, not an enemy. I walked to the window. Outside, dusk was settling over the street, softening the edges of the houses and trees. I watched the lights turn on in distant windows, families gathering, laughing, sharing dinners. Ordinary life going on as mine shifted under my feet. I remembered raising Daniel. How he used to cling to my skirt when he was scared. How he'd fall asleep with his head on my shoulder. I remembered tying his shoes, wiping his tears, teaching him to ride a bike. And now he was discussing where to move me as if choosing a storage facility. There are pains no one warns you about. The pain of becoming unnecessary. The pain of being replaced in the very life you built. I sat again, slower this time. I had to decide what to do with what I knew. I could confront them. That was the simplest option, the one they'd expect. But I wasn't sure I wanted a shouting match. Noise has never been my language. No, I needed something else. Something deliberate. Something they wouldn't anticipate from a woman they believed was fading at the edges. I folded the phone shut. The little click echoed faintly in the quiet room. I whispered to myself, not as comfort, but as acknowledgement. I heard you. Every word. And once said aloud, the truth stopped trembling inside me. I wasn't helpless, I wasn't confused, and I wasn't done. I listened to the recording once more that night, but not in pieces this time. I let it play from start to finish, as if hearing it in one breath would make the truth settle more firmly inside me. I wanted to understand, not just what they planned, but how they sounded while planning it. The tone, the ease, the absence of hesitation. It began with the scrape of a chair, someone sitting down. Then Daniel's voice, tired and irritated. She's not going to manage much longer. Did you see how she hesitated on the stairs today? What if she falls? We'd be the ones dealing with the aftermath. The aftermath. That's all I was in his mind now. Another obligation. Kendra poured something into a glass. I heard the liquid. It's not just the stairs. She's losing track of things. Yesterday, she asked me twice what day it was. Twice. I remembered that moment. Not confusion, just fatigue. But they had been waiting for proof, and they took it eagerly, like hands reaching for a rope. Lauren chimed in, chewing something while she spoke. And that phone, my God. How do you even help a person who refuses to update anything? She lives like it's still the 80s. They laughed. I didn't mind the laughter anymore. The words had already done the damage. Daniel lowered his voice, the way people do when they want to sound reasonable while being cruel. Look, we can't wait until she starts forgetting bills or signing the wrong documents. If we handle this now, she won't have to worry about anything. Exactly, Kendra added. We get her to sign the preliminary medical consent form. It'll let us talk to her doctors and make decisions if she gets, confused. Confused. A word they liked. A word that made everything easier for them. But what about the house? Lauren asked. Kendra didn't even pause. It's too much for her. Maintenance, taxes, everything. Once she signs the guardianship paperwork, we can sell it. Use the funds for her long-term care. Long-term care? Daniel repeated. But he didn't say it with worry. No. His voice carried something close to relief. Honestly, that might be best. She'd be around people her age, activities, nurses, and we wouldn't have to keep checking on her every week. Every week. They visited once a month, if that. Lauren made a surprised sound. Does she even have that much money left? Grandpa's insurance, the pension, the savings? You sure she hasn't spent it? Daniel snorted. Have you met my mother? She still writes checks. She wouldn't spend a dime unless forced. The accounts are untouched. Then Kendra, soft, firm, like she was cutting fabric. It's better for everyone if we handle this now, before she gets any ideas about giving things away. Old people do that. The recording caught the faint clinking of glass. A toast, my son's voice again, to getting things in order. They all echoed it. A chorus, a celebration. Not one person at that table asked whether I wanted any of it. Not one wondered if I might still have plans for my own life. Not one said, she's still here. She's still capable. She's still ours. I paused the recording there, though I knew there was more. I didn't need to hear it all tonight. The shape of the truth was already carved deeply enough. I closed the phone. It rested in my palm, warm from my skin, a small weight with a heavy purpose. I set it down gently on the table beside me. The house made a faint settling sound, a soft groan in the walls, not pain, just age. I understood it well. I leaned back into my chair. My body was tired, but my mind felt strangely awake, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. There is something bracing about seeing clearly, even when the truth is bitter. It sharpens the edges of the world. I wasn't angry. I thought I would be, but anger didn't find me. What found me instead was clarity, a long, straight line inside my chest. They believed I was agreeable. They believed I would sign anything put in front of me. They believed age had softened my spine. They were wrong. I folded my hands in my lap and let the silence settle around me like a shawl. Tomorrow, I would begin, not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily, step by step. They had made their plans. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, not even from anger, just from the weight of understanding settling into place. Betrayal doesn't rush, it seeps. It fills the cracks slowly until everything inside you is coated with it. I lay in bed, listening to the old clock in the hallway mark the hours. Its rhythm had always comforted me, but tonight it felt like it was counting something else. Not time. Resolve. Around dawn, I gave up on rest. My knees protested when I stood, but pain at my age is like an old acquaintance, unwelcome, yet familiar enough not to startle. I wrapped my cardigan around my shoulders and walked to the kitchen. The house still held the chill of early morning. The floorboards stiffened under my feet. I made tea slowly, carefully, and brought it to the table. Steam rose, curling toward the window like it was trying to escape. I understood the feeling. I hadn't cried. I kept waiting for the tears, the shaking hands, the moment of collapse. But it never came. Instead, there was a clarity that I hadn't felt in years, a quiet steadiness, as if some long-lost part of me had woken again. Maybe this is what happens when you spend your whole life bending for others. You forget you can stand. I took my old phone from the pocket of my cardigan and set it on the table. The little silver shell didn't look dangerous. It looked almost gentle. But inside it now lived a truth my family had never meant me to hear. A truth they would likely deny, soften, twist into something unrecognizable. I touched the surface with one fingertip. A recording had shattered something in me, but not in the way they might imagine. It didn't break my heart. It broke the illusion that I still had one to offer them. Outside, a bird was pecking at the grass near the porch. A robin. Peter used to say that robins brought messages. I smiled at the memory, small, faint, but still warm. 36 years with a man whose honesty was as dependable as his morning newspaper. I wondered what he would say now. Probably something gentle, followed by something firm. He had a talent for pairing kindness with truth. I sipped my tea. It tasted harsher today, but maybe that was me. Around 9, Daniel sent a message. "Mom, we're coming by tomorrow to talk. Just a quick thing to sign." Tomorrow? They were moving faster than I had expected. I didn't reply. Silence is also a language, one they weren't fluent in. I spent the next hours cleaning, not out of necessity, my house has always been tidy, but to steady myself. I wiped the kitchen counters, straightened the books on the shelf, dusted the framed photographs. One by one, I touched the faces inside them. My younger self, smiling with a fullness I haven't worn in years. Peter, strong and kind, one arm around Daniel as a boy. Daniel himself, gap-toothed, bright-eyed, clinging to my hand. I paused over that one. The little boy who once believed I could fix anything. The little boy who used to crawl into my lap when he was tired, trusting me to hold his whole world together. Where had he gone? When had he outgrown not just childhood, but love? Perhaps love doesn't disappear. Perhaps it just changes shape until it no longer fits. By afternoon, the sun had warmed the living room, and the air felt softer. I sat in my armchair, letting the warmth ease the stiffness in my hands. My phone lay beside me. I didn't open it this time. I didn't need to. I knew the voices by heart already. What mattered now was not what they had said, but what I would do next. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is loud, messy, fueled by fury. What I felt was quieter, cleaner, a decision forming, solidifying like cooled glass. I would not raise my voice. I would not plead. I would not let them see me shaken. No, if they wanted to rearrange my life, they would discover that even old furniture can have weight. The afternoon drifted by in calm thought. When the phone finally buzzed again, Kendra this time saying she'd help me review the documents tomorrow, I simply set it face down. Tomorrow they expected me to sit, nod, sign. But tonight, sitting in the gentle warmth of my own home, I realized something simple and profound. My life still belonged to me, and I intended to keep it that way. The morning they planned to stop by with paperwork, I dressed earlier than usual. Nothing special, just a soft gray sweater, black slacks, and the pearl earrings Peter gave me on our 15th anniversary. I didn't wear them often, but today I needed the reminder of something steady, something earned, honestly. Daniel had said they'd arrive around noon. That gave me enough time to do what needed to be done before they ever set foot near my door. At 9:15, I picked up my old phone and called the one person I trusted with matters like these. Mr. Hollis, my attorney for the last 20 years. A patient man with a quiet voice and sharper instincts than anyone gives him credit for. He used to meet with Peter and me together, and after Peter passed, he made a point of asking how I was managing each time we spoke, not out of politeness, but out of habit formed in genuine care. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Elderton," he said, sounding pleasantly surprised. "What can I do for you this morning?" For a moment, I didn't speak. Not because I hesitated, but because speaking the truth aloud would make it real. After last night's long quiet, the sound of my own voice felt foreign. "I need to review my legal protections," I said at last. "All of them." There was a brief pause on his end, just a breath. "Has something happened?" "A development," I replied carefully. "One that requires discretion." He didn't push. Good men never do. "Can you come by the office?" "Yes," I said. "Today." Within an hour, I was sitting across from him in his small corner office, surrounded by neat stacks of files that always made me feel oddly reassured. He looked at me over his glasses, reading more in my face than I told him. "Mrs. Elderton," he said gently, "you've never come in without an appointment. Tell me what's wrong." I opened my phone, scrolled to the recording, and set the device between us. "My family has plans," I said, "and I need to make sure they don't proceed." Again, he waited. I didn't play the recording. I didn't need to. Not yet. Instead, I described the situation plainly: the talk of guardianship, the accounts, the house, the signatures they expected me to give easily. Mr. Hollis's expression changed slowly, moving from surprise to something firmer, more professional. "You are in full control of your faculties," he said. "Completely capable. And you came here of your own accord. That already places you in a strong position." "I intend to remain in one," I answered. He nodded once, approvingly. Then he opened a file drawer and took out a stack of forms. "First," he said, "we revoke any and all prior powers of attorney, medical, financial, or otherwise. Even if your son doesn't know these documents exist, revocation ensures legal protection." I signed the forms with a steady hand. Each signature felt like reclaiming a small piece of ground I hadn't realized I'd surrendered over the years. "Next," he continued, "we prepare a directive stating that no guardianship or medical authority is to be granted without a court's full evaluation and your explicit consent." I said, "Yes, I want that." He nodded. "Good. And the house? Do you want it protected?" It was the simplest question of the day. Yes, more than anything. There were options: a living trust, a transfer on death deed, restrictive conditions, limited access clauses. All quiet, legal, precise. Tools meant not for battle, but for boundaries. We chose a revocable living trust with strict stipulations. The house would move into it, my assets as well, not controlled by Daniel or Kendra, now or ever. "Your beneficiaries?" he asked. I thought of Lauren, her sharp laugh last night, the way she dismissed me like an outdated appliance. Then I thought of Lily, my granddaughter from my late daughter, the one who still visited twice a month, who brought her own homemade bread because she knew my wrists hurt to knead dough. "Lily," I said softly. "Only her." His pen scratched across the page. By the time the documents were complete, the morning light had shifted. Sun glinted off the frames on his wall. I felt, not lighter, exactly, but more aligned, as if my spine had straightened. When we finished, he folded his hands. "If they pressure you," he said, "you call me, immediately." I nodded. "I don't think they expect resistance." "That," he replied, "is precisely your advantage." As I walked out of the office, the air outside felt sharper, more awake. I stood for a moment, letting the wind touch my face. I wasn't sure how Daniel and Kendra would react later that day. But for the first time in a long while, the thought didn't frighten me. I had begun to reclaim myself, and I wasn't done yet. The bank was warmer than the outside air, filled with that faint, sterile smell of printers and carpet cleaner. I'd been here 1,000 times over the years. Peter and I used to sit at these very desks, discussing our savings with the same seriousness other couples reserve for buying a house or naming a child. The place hadn't changed much. I had. My steps were slow but steady as I approached the reception desk. The young woman behind it, bright smile, glossy hair, greeted me with a chirpy, "Good morning," as if she had spare sunlight to hand out. I nodded, politely. "I'm here to see Mr. Dalton," I said. Her smile softened into something respectful. "Of course, Mrs. Elderton. He'll be right out." While I waited, I rested my hand on my phone in my coat pocket. Not because I planned to use it, but because I wanted to feel its weight. Small, familiar, a reminder of why I was doing this. Mr. Dalton appeared in less than a minute. A kind man, late 50s, the sort of banker who treats your money as carefully as his own. He shook my hand with genuine warmth. "What brings you in today?" he asked. "A few changes," I replied. "I need to secure all my accounts." "Every one of them," He gestured toward his office. Let's sit and go over it. Inside, he closed the door gently, as if sensing that privacy mattered. I told him I wanted to revoke all shared access, cancel automatic transfers, and place everything, savings, investments, certificates, into the trust Mr. Hollis had set up that morning. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. Of course, he said, we can do all of that. May I ask, has something happened? People always ask that when a woman my age draws a line. They think decisions come from confusion or fear, not clarity, not dignity. Just a matter of protection, I answered. Long overdue. He didn't push further. He printed forms, placed markers where I needed to sign, explained each step with careful precision. I understood everything. My mind was sharp. Sharper, maybe, than it had been in years. Knowing the truth has a way of waking you up. When we reached the final document, he hesitated. This one, he said gently, revokes financial permissions previously granted to your son. Are you certain you want this? I thought of Daniel's voice in the recording, impatient, dismissive, confident that I would nod along to whatever they put in front of me. Yes, I said. I'm certain. I signed. My hand didn't shake. It took nearly an hour to complete everything. When Mr. Dalton finally gathered the papers, he gave me a careful look, concerned, but respectful. You've built a very secure structure for yourself, he said. Your assets are protected. No one can touch them without your explicit consent. Good, I replied. That's exactly what I wanted. As I stood to leave, he added quietly, if anyone pressures you or tries to interfere, please tell me. You're not alone in this. The kindness almost surprised me. After the last few days, I'd begun to forget what simple decency felt like. I thanked him and walked out into the main lobby, my steps lighter than before. Outside, the wind had picked up. It tugged at my coat, but it couldn't unsettle me. Not now. Not after everything I'd secured. By the time I reached my front door, a message was already waiting on my phone. A cheerful reminder from Kendra about their visit in a few hours. As discussed, we'll help you sign the papers today. The little sparkle at the end felt like an insult. I placed the phone on the table and looked around my quiet living room. Sunlight touched the framed photographs, the worn armchair, the bookshelves. My life, my things, mine. They believed today would be simple. They believed I would sit while they guided my hand. But every signature they expected had already been undone, and I was ready. They arrived earlier than promised. I heard the car doors before I saw them, the hurried slam of Daniel's, the lighter thud of Kendra's, and the careless swing of Lauren's. People reveal themselves in the sounds they make without thinking. I was in the kitchen when they let themselves in. They never knocked anymore. Mom? Daniel called, cheerful in that brittle way he uses when he wants something. We're here. I wiped my hands on a towel. I'm in here. They came in smiling, all three of them, practiced and bright. Kendra carried a folder thick enough to make her posture stiff. Lauren was scrolling on her phone, barely glancing at me. Daniel opened his arms for a hug I didn't step into. His arms dropped quickly, but he recovered with a smile. You look nice today, he said. I didn't. I looked like myself. Maybe that surprised him. Kendra placed the folder on the table like she was presenting a menu at a restaurant. We brought the paperwork we mentioned. It's all very simple. Just routine things to make sure everything is in order. Routine, yes. Guardianship, access to accounts, medical authority. All very routine when you say it lightly enough. Lauren finally looked up from her screen. "And we'll go through it slowly," she said, as if speaking to a child. "No pressure." I pulled out a chair and sat down. They took this as agreement. All three sat, hands ready, eyes expectant. I folded my hands in my lap and let silence settle for a moment. It always makes people uncomfortable, especially those who rely on speed to hide their intentions. Daniel cleared his throat. "So, Mom, this first page just lets us help you with your medical decisions if something happens. You know, if you get confused or overwhelmed." "I see," I said quietly. He relaxed, thinking I was compliant. Kendra took over, sliding the next set of papers forward. "And this section is only about simplifying finances. You won't have to deal with bills or taxes anymore. We'll take care of everything." Lauren added, "Honestly, it's for your own good. We know how stressful stuff can get at your age." At your age. They said it as if it were a diagnosis. I nodded slowly, letting them feel the illusion of progress. Their faces softened, hopeful. They really believed I was about to give them the keys to my life without question. Perhaps I had taught them that, unintentionally. Years of gentleness mistaken for passivity. Years of silence mistaken for surrender. Daniel pushed a pen toward me. "Just sign here. This is the main one." I looked at the line where my name should go, empty and waiting. The page was thick with legal implications, but their eyes were focused only on that single blank space, as if filling it in would finally make everything easier for them. "I won't be signing anything today," I said. It was almost amusing how simultaneously their faces changed. Surprise, irritation, a flash of panic. They tried to hide it, but expressions don't lie. Daniel laughed nervously. "Mom, come on, don't make this harder." Kendra leaned in, lowering her voice. "We're trying to help you." "No," I replied. "You're trying to help yourselves." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Oh God, Grandma, don't start with that dramatic stuff." There was nothing dramatic in my voice. It was steady, almost gentle. "I've already spoken to my attorney." That made them still. "Your attorney?" Daniel repeated, as though the word belonged to strangers, not his own mother. "Yes," I said. "This morning. Everything has been updated." Kendra blinked. "Updated how?" "All powers of attorney revoked. All accounts secured. My home and assets moved into a trust with beneficiaries assigned." I let the words rest in the air, simple and factual. "There's nothing here you can access. Not today, not later." Silence fell, heavy and brittle. Lauren was the first to react. "You didn't have to go that far." "You went further," I said softly. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, agitated. "Mom, you're misunderstanding. We're worried about you." "No," I said again. "You're worried about control." Kendra pushed the folder away as if it had betrayed her. "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting." I reached into my pocket, touched the small weight of the phone there, but I didn't take it out. Not yet. They weren't ready for the truth recorded inside. "This conversation," I said quietly, "is the first honest one we've had in years." They stared at me, not understanding that I hadn't even begun. After they left, frustrated, confused, pretending not to be angry, I thought the house would feel lighter. It didn't. It felt watchful, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what I'd do next. But nothing in me shook. Their disappointment didn't frighten me the way it once might have. Pressure only works on people who believe they have something to lose. I had already secured everything worth keeping. Still, I knew my silence wouldn't stop them. They would regroup, reassess, and return with new strategies. People who rely on manipulation rarely give up after the first attempt. They simply get more creative. The next afternoon, the phone rang. Daniel. I didn't answer. Then Kendra. Then Lauren. Twice. I let every call go to voicemail. Silence was no longer a weakness. It was control. Later, while I was folding laundry, my phone lit up again. A group call accidentally initiated, perhaps. Or perhaps not accidental at all. I let it connect without a sound and set the phone on the counter. Their voices filled the kitchen like an unwelcome draft. Kendra's tone was clipped, irritated. She's being unreasonable, completely unreasonable. Who even hired a lawyer at her age? Lauren scoffed. She probably thinks we're trying to steal from her. She's so paranoid. It's embarrassing. Daniel exhaled sharply. Well, she acted like she had everything settled. A trust? Revoking POA? Who gave her those ideas? She can't manage something that complex, Kendra insisted. Someone's influencing her. Maybe that, what's his name? Hollis. Does it matter? Daniel snapped. We were supposed to get the paperwork signed this week. The house isn't going to maintain itself, and her savings are just sitting there doing nothing. Lauren chimed in, her voice edged with annoyance. Can't we challenge the trust? She's old. Courts know old people get confused. Maybe we could... No, Daniel cut her off. Not yet. We need another approach. She's calm now, but she'll break eventually. She always does. Always does. I folded a towel in half with precise, deliberate movements. There was no tremor in my hands. Kendra sighed dramatically. Fine. Then we try the emotional route. She's weak to guilt. I can talk to her, you know. Woman to woman. Give her the, we're only trying to help speech. You tried that already, Lauren muttered. And she refused. Maybe we need to push harder. Daniel lowered his voice. We'll regroup on Saturday. She won't shut us out forever. She needs us. That word, needs, landed like a stone. I pressed the phone's side button and ended the call. My reflection in the kitchen window looked back at me. Older, yes, lined and weathered, but still undeniably present. Present in ways they had underestimated for years. They believed I would fall apart if they pulled away. They believed my life orbited around their convenience. They believed I needed their guidance, their decisions, their help. They were wrong. The truth was far quieter and much simpler. I had built my life long before they were born, and I could protect it long after they stopped pretending to care. I placed the folded towels in the linen closet, one by one, each movement slow, deliberate. My breathing even. They thought they had time. They thought their plans remained hidden. They thought they controlled the narrative. They didn't know the phone had recorded this conversation too. Nothing they plotted stayed secret anymore, and soon enough they would learn that the woman they thought they could outmaneuver had been listening the entire time. They came back on Saturday, just as they'd discussed in that call they never meant me to hear. I saw their car pull up from the living room window. Even the way they parked revealed their mood. Quick, sharp movements, as if urgency alone could soften my resolve. I didn't rush to open the door. Let them wait a moment. Let them feel what stillness feels like when it isn't working in their favor. Finally, I opened it. Daniel stood first, tense determination in his shoulders. Kendra wore a soft expression that didn't reach her eyes. Lauren didn't bother hiding her impatience. "Mom," Daniel said, "can we come in?" You're already here, I replied, stepping aside. They entered as if the house belonged to them, a habit I should have corrected years ago. Today, that changed. Let's talk, Daniel began, heading toward the kitchen table, but I remained in the living room. We'll talk here. They exchanged glances but followed me. I sat in my armchair. They arranged themselves on the sofa. I could feel them studying me, gauging how soft or stubborn I might be. Kendra began first. Of course she did. "We're worried about you," she said, in that syrupy tone meant to coat the bitter core of her intent. "You've been shutting us out." I looked at her evenly. "You're mistaken. I've simply been protecting what's mine." Lauren scoffed quietly. "Grandma, nobody is taking anything from you. You're overreacting." "I'm responding," I corrected, "not reacting." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Look, Mom, maybe things got off on the wrong foot. We just want to help you, to make sure you're safe." Safe. People often use that word when what they really want is control. "My safety," I said, "was not your concern in the recording you left on my phone." Their bodies went still, frozen, breath held. Daniel blinked. "Recording?" "Yes," I answered, my voice level. "The phone automatically records sometimes. I heard every word." Kendra's face drained of color. Lauren's eyes narrowed, defensive. Daniel swallowed hard. "What exactly did you hear?" he asked quietly. "The truth," I said. "In your own voices." The room held its breath. Kendra was the first to find hers again, though it came out thin, shaky. "You're misunderstanding. Those weren't serious conversations. People vent. You know how it is." "That was not venting," I replied. "That was planning." Daniel pressed a hand to his forehead. "Mom, listen. This is getting blown out of proportion. We were stressed. We worry about you. You live alone. The house is mine," I said. "Paid for with decades of work. Maintained by my hands. Loved by my husband. Not a burden. Not a commodity." Lauren crossed her arms. "So you're punishing us?" "No," I said. "I'm setting boundaries. Late, but necessary." They shifted uncomfortably. Losing access to my life unsettled them more than they expected. They weren't used to meeting resistance here. Daniel tried again, softening his voice. "Mom, you've never acted like this. You're letting other people influence you." "I'm letting clarity influence me," I corrected. "Not fear, not guilt. Certainly not manipulation." Kendra's lips tightened. "We're your family." I met her gaze. Family doesn't plan how to dismantle someone's life behind their back. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Lauren broke it with a small, shaky exhale. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "you accept that the decisions about my home, my accounts, and my future belong to me. You will respect that, or you will not be included in my life. It's that simple." Daniel's voice cracked around the edges. "You can't just cut us out." "I'm not cutting," I said. "I'm choosing." Their faces, hurt, confused, indignant, blurred together into a single expression I had seen before. Disbelief that the woman they underestimated had found her voice again. I stood, slowly but steadily. This conversation is over. It was the first time in many years they obeyed something I said without arguing. Maybe they finally heard the steel in my voice. Or maybe they simply didn't know what to do now that the ground beneath them had shifted. As they walked toward the door, none of them dared to turn back. Only once the house was quiet again did I let out a breath. Not relief, not sadness, just certainty. I had begun the ending of the life they wanted for me, and the beginning of the life I chose. They didn't stay away for long. 2 days passed, just enough for them to feel wounded, righteous, and newly determined. On the third afternoon, they returned. Not together this time. Separately, as if staggered arrivals might soften my stance or dilute their guilt. Daniel came first. No folder, no cheerful tone, just a tired man standing on my porch with his hands shoved into his pockets. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He stepped inside anyway, the old habit of assuming permission still guiding him. "Mom," he said, rubbing his neck, "we need to clear the air." There was no air to clear. The truth had been laid out cleanly already. But I nodded toward the living room. He sat down heavily on the sofa, elbows on his knees like a boy about to confess something, but not sure where to start. I waited. Silence is a kind friend. It always tells you what a person truly feels. Finally, he lifted his head. "I never meant to hurt you." That was the trouble with Daniel. He believed intention erased impact. "You did," I said quietly, "whether you meant to or not." Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Kendra. She stepped in with the sharp confidence of a woman accustomed to shaping a conversation before it begins. When she saw Daniel already seated, her smile flickered, but she recovered quickly. "I'm glad we're all talking," she said. I didn't correct her. "We are not all talking. You are hoping to control the narrative." Instead, I let her sit beside him. Then Lauren arrived. No knock, just breezing through the doorway with an anxious energy she tried to hide behind false cheer. "Oh, good, everyone's here," she said. "Let's figure this out." They gathered on the sofa, united by confusion, frustration, maybe even a flicker of fear. I remained in my armchair, the one place in this house where I didn't feel small. Daniel leaned forward. "Mom, we think things escalated too quickly. Maybe you misunderstood some of what we said. Maybe you took it out of context," Kendra added. Lauren crossed her arms. "People say things they don't mean." "I know," I replied. "That's why I keep evidence of what they say." Their confusion sharpened into something else, a brief, flickering dread. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and took out my little silver phone. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I simply laid it on the table between us. "This," I said, "recorded everything you planned." Daniel shook his head. "Mom," I pressed play. Their voices filled the room instantly, familiar, undeniable, stripped of excuses. Every word they thought would remain private, every implication, every intent. The talk of guardianship, of selling my home, of accessing my accounts, of steering me gently into irrelevance. Lauren covered her mouth. Kendra went rigid, her spine stiff as a snapped branch. Daniel's face drained of color. When the recording ended, the room felt hollow. Even the air seemed to pull back, unwilling to touch what lingered there. Daniel spoke first. His voice cracked. "Mom, we didn't mean—" But he couldn't finish. None of them could. The truth was too naked, too precise. Their own voices had turned against them. I closed the phone gently. The soft click felt louder than anything they'd just heard. "This," I said, "is why I secured everything, why I went to my attorney, why I no longer trust your intentions." Kendra finally found her voice, thin and shaking. "We were frustrated. We didn't think you'd ever hear any of that." "That," I said softly, "is the problem." Lauren wiped at her eyes, not from grief, but from embarrassment. "We messed up." "You did more than that," I replied. You revealed exactly how you see me. Not as a mother, not as a grandmother, as an inconvenience you hope to manage. No one argued. Perhaps for the first time in years, they understood that nothing they said could be smoothed over with a hug or a quick apology. I stood, slowly but firmly. This conversation is now part of my record, and you will not speak to me again unless it is with honesty. They didn't rise. They looked small, all three of them, sitting on that sofa where I had once read them stories, patched their clothes, held them when they were sick. But the past could not protect them now. I walked to the door and opened it. You may leave. None of them protested. None of them dared. And when the door closed behind them, the house finally exhaled with me. The house felt still after they left, as if it were listening to the silence I'd waited years to hear. No footsteps pacing, no forced laughter, no soft-edged manipulation wrapped in family concern. Just quiet. Clean quiet. The kind that lets you find your own thoughts again. I sat in my armchair for a long while, letting the weight of the moment settle. Not heavy, not painful, just present. Like a coat you finally shrug off after wearing too long. The phone lay on the table beside me, the little silver hinge glinting in the afternoon light. A simple thing. Yet it had become the dividing line between the life where I endured quietly and the life where I finally spoke. I picked it up and dialed Mr. Hollis. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Elderton," he said, "is everything all right?" "Yes," I replied. "Everything is exactly as it should be. I just wanted to let you know the documents you prepared, every one of them, now stands firm. There will be no further challenges." There was a pause, then a soft, approving hum. "Good. And if they approach you again, I won't entertain them without you present," I interrupted gently. The boundary is clear. For the first time, I heard pride in his voice. "Then you're well protected." After we ended the call, I pulled out the folder he'd given me. The trust documents, the revocations, the directives, all neatly arranged. My name written in firm black ink at the bottom of every page. My handwriting, my choice, my life. I placed the folder in the drawer of the old oak desk Peter built. The lock clicked softly. A final punctuation mark. As I stood, my joints protested, but even that felt manageable. Pain with a purpose. I walked through the room slowly, touching the back of a chair, the corner of a picture frame, the worn banister, reclaiming everything as mine, not as something they planned to sell off like discarded furniture. In the kitchen, I brewed tea, not to soothe myself, but because the ritual felt like a declaration of normalcy, a quiet reclaiming of everyday life. The kettle hissed, then settled. I poured the water, watching steam rise and curl like breath in cold air. When I sat again, the tea warmed my hands, and the warmth traveled through me with a calm finality. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't grieving. I was simply steady. They had tried to reshape my life without me. They had spoken about me as if I were fading. They had planned a future where I no longer had a voice. But I had reclaimed that voice. Not loudly, not violently, just firmly, like a woman placing both feet on solid ground. As the daylight dimmed, I looked toward the window. The maple tree outside bent gently in the wind, its branches whispering against the glass. Not mournful, not afraid, just alive. I felt the same. Age had taken much from me, Peter, time, the easy confidence of youth. But it had given me one thing in return, the ability to see people clearly, especially when they believed I wasn't looking. And now, with my home protected, my accounts secured, my future truly mine, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. Peace. Not because they'd changed, but because I finally had. The days after the confrontation were strangely calm. No phone calls, no surprise visits, no guilt-soaked messages about misunderstandings. My house felt like itself again, its own breath, its own rhythm. I moved through it without the weight of waiting for another intrusion. But silence from family is never simply silence. It is strategy, or retreat, or a pause before the next attempt. On the fourth day, Daniel finally called. I let the phone ring out. A minute later, a text followed. "Mom, please. We need to talk." I read it, then placed the phone face down. I wasn't ready to talk, not because I was fragile, but because I was no longer willing to be maneuvered into conversations designed to reshape me. I had spent years shrinking myself to keep peace. Peace deserved more than that. The next day, Kendra arrived unannounced. She rang the bell twice, then 3 times, her impatience tapping through the door like a persistent insect. I opened it halfway. She forced a smile, soft, rehearsed, far too polished to be real. "I just want to clear things up." "There's nothing unclear," I replied. Her smile slipped. "You can't honestly believe we meant those things." "I don't need to believe," I said. "I heard them." She inhaled sharply, as if my steadiness offended her. "You're making this impossible." "I'm making this equal," I corrected. "You're simply not used to it." That landed harder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. She tried again. "Families go through rough patches. We say things we regret, but cutting us out." "I haven't cut anyone out," I said. "I've stepped out of reach." The distinction mattered. It seemed to confuse her. When she realized she couldn't push past me, literally or otherwise, she finally muttered, "Fine," and walked away. Her anger trailed behind her like perfume. Lauren came the next afternoon. She didn't ring the bell. She simply stood outside, shifting her weight from foot to foot, as though unsure how to approach me without her usual bravado. When I opened the door, she looked smaller than the last time I saw her. "Grandma," she said, we were awful." I nodded, acknowledging the truth without feeding it. "I didn't think you'd hear it," she whispered. "That," I said softly, "was the saddest part." Her eyes filled, but tears weren't enough to undo the harm. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back, not harshly, just clearly. "I need time," I told her. She nodded, wiping her face. "Will you talk to us again?" "When you learn to talk to me," I said, "and not about me." She left quietly, which told me she understood more than the others. But it was Daniel's absence that lingered. No messages that day, no footsteps on the porch. Just silence. A heavy one, shaped like avoidance. When evening fell, I sat in my chair by the window, watching the maple tree sway in the soft wind. The house felt calm. My hands were steady. For the first time, I realized I wasn't waiting for him to come. I wasn't hoping for remorse or expecting understanding. Some ties don't snap. They loosen. Slowly, quietly, honestly. Not out of anger, just out of truth. And I was finally willing to let truth guide me. The quiet that settled over the next week didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Like the air after a storm, still unsettled at the edges but clearing. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own footsteps again. I spent my mornings in the garden. The autumn wind had begun to chill the soil, and the flowers were bowing their heads, preparing for their long sleep. I knelt slowly, knees stiff but willing, and loosened the earth around the roots. The dirt felt cool, grounding. When you're close to the end of your life, tending to something that will outlive you carries its own kind of comfort. Inside, the house felt softer too. I opened curtains that had stayed drawn for years, letting the morning light spill across the floorboards. Dust floated in thin beams of gold. I found myself sitting in that light more often, simply breathing. I didn't miss the tension. I didn't miss the pretending. I didn't miss waiting for footsteps that brought more obligation than affection. But I did think of Lily. She hadn't been part of any of this. She lived 2 towns over, worked long hours, barely had time to breathe, yet she still found spare weekends to check on me. Not out of duty, out of love. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. So when she called on Thursday evening, her voice bright and hurried, my heart lifted before I even answered. "Grandma, I got off early. Can I stop by?" "Yes," I said. "Please do." She arrived 20 minutes later, cheeks rosy from the wind, carrying a loaf of bread wrapped in a towel. She always brought something, though I never asked. The moment she stepped into the house, she paused. "It feels different in here," she said softly. "Lighter." I smiled. So do I. We sat in the kitchen, sipping tea, the smell of her bread warming the room. She talked about work, her students, the small joys of her week. I listened, grateful for a conversation that didn't hover over me like a net. No agendas, no pressure, just presence. Eventually, she grew quiet, studying my face with that perceptive stillness she inherited from her mother. "Are you all right?" "I am," I said, for the first time in a very long time. She reached for my hand, gently, respectfully. "If you ever need anything, I'll tell you," I promised. "But I don't need rescuing, just company now and then." Her smile warmed me more than the tea. After she left, I walked through the house again, slowly, letting my fingers brush the old banister. This place had held my sorrow for years, but now it was learning to hold something else. One afternoon, I took a walk to the small cafe at the end of the block, a place I hadn't visited since before Peter passed. The barista, a young man with kind eyes, recognized me. "Haven't seen you in ages," he said. "Still prefer the chamomile?" "Yes," I answered. "Some things don't need changing." I sat by the window with my tea, watching people pass by. Mothers pushing strollers, teenagers arguing playfully, older couples leaning into each other as they walked. Life moving, stirring, reshaping itself. And I realized something simple. I was not lonely. I was alone, yes, but not lonely. The difference was sharp and clean and mine. When I returned home, the house welcomed me with its quiet again. Not a suffocating quiet, but a companionable one. A space I had reclaimed inch by inch, choice by choice. My world had grown smaller, perhaps, but it had also grown clearer, truer, and infinitely more my own. And for the first time in years, I felt ready, not for confrontation, not for defense, but for whatever quiet happiness was left for me. I woke earlier than usual the next morning, though nothing in particular was waiting for me. Age changes your sleep patterns. Your body becomes a lighter keeper of time. But today, I felt something else tugging at me. Not worry, not dread, just readiness, like a woman standing at the last step of a long staircase. The house was calm. Sunlight reached across the rug like an old friend's hand. I made tea, steady and unrushed. The warmth filled my palms, and for a moment I simply stood there, breathing the quiet in. Around 10, I heard footsteps outside. Familiar ones. I didn't tense. I didn't straighten with anxiety. I just set my cup down and walked to the door. Daniel stood on the porch alone. He looked older than I remembered. Shoulders curved, eyes tired, as if he'd spent days rehearsing sentences he still didn't know how to say. "Mom," he whispered. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Not yet. He met my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't look past me or through me. His voice was softer than I'd expected. "I'm sorry." A simple sentence. Years late. "I know," I said. Not forgiving, not condemning, just acknowledging. He swallowed. "I was wrong. We all were. I said things I shouldn't have. Things no son should ever say." He rubbed his hands together. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to hear that. It wasn't enough to erase what had been done, but it was enough to ease the heaviness inside my chest. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "Anger takes energy I no longer choose to give, but things have changed, and they needed to." He nodded, slowly, painfully. "Do you still want distance?" "I want honesty," I said, my voice steady, "and boundaries. And if you can offer those, then we can find our way forward, carefully." Relief flickered in his eyes. Not joy, just a soft release of breath, as if he'd expected a locked door instead. "I can try," he murmured. "Then that's enough for now," I replied. He didn't push further. That alone was progress. He stepped back, gave me a small, fragile smile, and walked away. Not defeated, simply humbled. Life teaches humility one way or another. When I closed the door, the quiet returned, but it felt different this time. Not protective, not heavy, just peaceful. Later that afternoon, Lily stopped by again. She brought soup this time, insisting I freeze half for later. She chatted while stirring it on the stove, filling the house with her easy warmth. At one point she paused, spoon in hand. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am," I answered. "Did something happen?" I shook my head gently. Something ended, and something else began. She didn't ask what. That's the gift of people who love you right. They don't demand explanations you aren't ready to give. After she left, I walked through the living room, letting my fingertips brush the photographs on the shelves. Some faces gone, some distant, some still learning how to return. Life is never one thing. It's a mixture of losses and small reconciliations, of old wounds and new beginnings. I sat in my armchair, the cushion shaped perfectly to me. Outside, the maple tree swayed, scattering a few leaves across the yard. I watched them fall, slow and unhurried, each one landing exactly where it needed to. For the first time in years, I felt my dignity settle back into my bones, not loudly, but fully. Not as something I had to fight for every day, but as something quietly restored. People think the elderly fade because the world grows louder. But sometimes we choose quiet not because we're weak, but because it's the only place where truth can breathe. I touched my old phone, running a thumb over its worn surface. "They heard my phone," I whispered to the empty room. "But they never really heard me." Now they had. And as long as I have breath, I will not let myself be treated like an afterthought again. If someone out there needs to hear this, listen closely. Your voice still matters. Your life is still yours. And if you want more stories like this, leave a comment or follow along.